I think I heard you right. You said that you lose half your subscribers every year, so that's a much higher churn than I would have expected. Is that consistent with what it's always been, or is that churn rate?
Yeah, that's pretty consistent. Yeah, and just to reiterate, half of it is what we call uncontrollable, because we don't know who our customers are. The biggest fallacy after the Time Warner Cable AO merge, I think Bernie was there in that meeting, their CMO comes to us and they want to see our customer list. Like, I couldn't tell you. We can't, like, you know, they were the, and it was just like, why, you didn't realize that? That's worth the purchase. Speaks volumes, doesn't it? We all know how that story ended. So the point is that in terms of churn, so we don't know, for example, if you disconnect from Fios because Time Warner Cable is your city because you moved to the suburbs and you're Comcast, we only see you that you're someone that like disconnected. And we don't know that you reconnected later. So half of it is what we call uncontrollable. The other part is what we call downgrades. There are people that actually kept their video service and just got rid of the premium. And no, it's been pretty consistent. I will tell you though, but it also varies by distributor. So it depends on how they go to market and how good they are at retaining. So I'd say the uncontrollable stuff is not consistent across the board. Some distributors who are better at executing have much better retention rates than others that are terrible at it.
Great. Yes, Mindy.
Big TV fan here. So the one name that you said in this whole presentation, which is just not a 20-year-old name, is Google Fiber. And I wonder what your vision is of where they're going in content delivery. What do you think they'll show up as?
Well, I'm going to let Bernie answer that because Bernie manages all the Google relationships and deals, so we've had some really interesting conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're interesting. You know, they kind of came on the market, and I think originally it was, all right, they're just kind of like poking Time Warner Cable and Comcast, and they're just going to come into this one market, they're going to invest, and really what they're going to do is up the ante in terms of broadband speeds. And interestingly enough, I think the strategy worked immediately, right? Right away you saw the incumbent, you know, all of a sudden raising speeds, lowering prices. And I think what started as like a little bit of a experimental project for them, then very quickly became a passion project. So it has been interesting to kind of hear now, obviously the expansion of their markets. I mean, the tough thing is it's an expensive experiment. And, but, you know, Shelly and I were talking about this. You know who used to be somewhat our Google, you know, back when they first came in the market was like Verizon, right? A distributor who had the technology, who was willing to do things differently than the incumbents were. And, you know, Google Fiber is like, when you look at, you know, really the experience, you know, I don't know how much you know about, you know, when you get installed, you know, it is not just your box, but you know, tablet comes along with it. Your tablet is part of like the remote. So really the entire experience of how you consume and watch television has been transformed. You know, they really fundamentally sell it as a broadband play first, and then video kind of comes on top of it. And really the level of innovation in terms of, you know, Shelly mentioned the walled garden that Comcast has. You know, Google on the other hand is, look, we're this fantastic pipe into the home, and we're going to have tremendous speed and a wonderful consumer intuitive user experience. If you've ever kind of dealt with Comcast or Time Warner's, like, you know, UI and the up and down buttons, right? It's just a completely different experience. The integration of services like Netflix right into your service, so you don't have to hit the input button to go to your Xbox actually. So it's a really, you know, I go back to, it's just a tremendous place to look at kind of consumer-centric innovation. So we're really partnering with them to use them as a little bit of a test bed. I mentioned Verizon because that's kind of how we've operated with Verizon. You know, when Comcast and Time Warner don't want to do certain things like launch HBO Go or authenticate, it always helps when you have a technology-forward partner like a Verizon who happens to be a competitor who's saying, yeah, sign me up. It just creates pressure for everybody else then to do some of the things that they've been unwilling to do. So Google Fiber, you know, I think people at the beginning weren't quite taking them very seriously, but obviously as they've expanded, and you know, they also have tremendous press leverage. You know, I think they've gotten noticed, and certainly the behavior of you know, some of the incumbents has begun to change. So strategically, our goal is to kind of partner with them to do some of the stuff that, some of these other guys would never allow us to do. Hopefully the consumer speaks, kind of it gets the coverage, and you kind of begin to transform how other people are both dealing with us as content partners as well as the delivery experience for consumers. So they're tremendously interesting. They are one of our, clients now, and it's actually quite funny. I tell Shelly every so often, I'm like, they had 200% growth this month. They went from like 10 to, but it actually is very rapid growth for a very small, for a very small upstart and very small market. They've got waiting lists of people who are like waiting. It just reminds me a lot of kind of the Verizon experience. When Fios came to New Jersey and they were doing it a block at a time, I was the one chasing the truck on the next block, asking them, like, when are you coming to mine? Very, very similar, except I think even more rapid and passionate. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that evolves.
And Nanda, I think your hand was up.
My question was again, international programming distribution in a country like India, where Bollywood and regional programming is so huge. What's HBO's next step? Are you joining forces with ZTV or?
We just did something in India.
Yeah. So we actually we launched Go2 in India. It's an interesting. We have a partnership there. Again, nuances of a market. The Indian market is interesting in that there are also content restrictions in terms of, if you've watched our content, it's certainly mature.
You should see our content in Singapore.
I'm saying it's mature, verging on X at times.
Except they do allow women with wet saris to dance.
So all to say is that we have clean versions of our content for markets like India and Singapore. I think a 50-minute show is maybe about 15 minutes based on those restrictions. But actually, I think what's more interesting about that is I know we're deviating. Theft is a big issue in markets like that, because if you can't get the real deal, Game of Thrones, then you're going to BitTorrent, right? And so it's been an interesting market to kind of try and find actually the right blend of our American content and what makes sense for the marketplace, and then partnering to kind of create original content that's appropriate for the marketplace, but still has an HBO feel.
And by the way, just internationally, you wouldn't recognize HBO internationally. Like, the HBO you see today is not what you'd see somewhere else. If we have content from competitors on there, like House of Cards could be on HBO overseas. Like, we have Showtime shows on HBO overseas. So there's it's our core stuff, but because a lot of that stuff gets bought, right? So we're buying a lot of the stuff for those things overseas, and then. In Great Britain, we don't have a channel, but we license all our content to be Sky B, and they actually call Sky Atlantic the home of HBO. So it kind of depends on the market, right?
We'll take one more question. That's Sarah.
Thanks, Loretta. I just wanted to find out what is your HBO's response to the fact that 40% of the market is not going to allow its customers to authenticate your product, or are you just going to ignore that 40% and go after the 60%? Or, I mean, that's your mobile strategy, right?
Yeah, well, and I say, so it hasn't happened yet. So right now, you're really referring to Comcast, right? And yeah. Going forward, yeah, I have to say, there's a couple of things that are going to happen. Depending on what happens out of Washington, we'll see, like, there could be some things that wouldn't allow them to do that, right? And I think our big leverage is in deals and negotiations, and you require an obligation to do certain things. The best thing that happens is competition. Like, I'll be honest with you, on some of these things, like, many times, like when we've launched on, like, they weren't going to authenticate on Apple TV, right? Comcast wasn't. And an hour before we went live, we got the call from Comcast. Okay, yeah, we're going to do it. And we didn't have, and then let me tell you what, our social media people go crazy. And like, they just, you just see, like, I mean, consumers are very, very passionate about it. So we're some of it we can do through deal making, right, and obligations that come along with it. Some of it is, a lot of it is consumer competitive pressure. But no, to say that we're not going to stand by, I mean, my thing is at your peril, at your peril. And I think they underestimate kind of the power of the HBO brand. And I don't think they actually really do underestimate. I think they get it. And I think that's why, like, no better leverage do we have when you get a show like Game of Thrones to those members on Sunday night. Yeah, try turning that off for your customers. It's fantastic.
What a complete pleasure to have both of you with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we have for you a very expensive gift for both seats. So thank you for being
I
here.
know they're all wondering, so Brindle and I are going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame concert tonight, which will be on HBO the 8th of May. So we learned yesterday that it's black tie. So that was the big dilemma, is like, what do you wear to a black tie Rock and Roll Hall of Fame concert? So that was the big conversation that we were having this morning. So my poor husband had to go find the tux yesterday, but
Unfortunately, nothing in that bag is going to solve that problem.
So anyway, well, thanks you guys, a great audience.